Hello, everyone. Welcome to the beginning of the never ending. This is the B&E podcast. We're excited to bring on another guest today. And this is actually really cool because this is kind of close to home. My wife has a really, really good friend, and her mother would like to be on the show. And so, really kind of special because we would like to kind of dive into the life of this is kind of a known friend of ours that we've hung out with for a long time. And even though we haven't had her on the show, we get to have her mother on the show, which makes it even better because we can always, dive into the depths of things. But for those who don't know, this is the story of people. B&E is all about learning about people's lives, where it began, and the never-ending, legacy of people to try to archive as many stories as possible to essentially tell people, hey, you're not meant you're meant to be remembered and not to be forgotten. So today, I would like to introduce Miss Jaz Tabong.
Hello.
I don't want to mess her name up 'cause, the way she explains it, it's actually really cool. And actually, I think that's kind of one of the things I really want to kind of dive into, being friends with her. And one of the things she tells us a lot is like her, I guess her ancestry, her aunt, where she's from is a big part of her life.
Yes.
So I'm really excited to kind of jump into that. So where are you guys from? And what
Okay.
exactly is kind of like, I don't know if you remember too much about your kind of ancestors or your where you guys are from, but where does the story begin?
So we came from the Philippines
Okay.
and we moved in 2016 because my mother-in-law filed a petition for us to be here back in 1993, so you can just imagine how long it has been.
Whoa.
I was single then, my husband was single, and then we got married in 1995, and then we had children. I had Julia in 1995,
Wow.
and we lived a life
Mm,
so to the full because we started young.
mm,
So I basically planned my life since I was a child.
mm,
as as young as 4 years old, I wanted to be a doctor,
mm.
but things happened. I saw this cadaver being autopsied, and I said, no, this is not for me. I can't deal with it.
No, I imagine
So
so.
I will just become a lawyer because my great granddad is a judge and a fiscal of two towns, so that's big. He's managing two towns, making
Yeah.
decisions for those cases. So it's like in my blood. And then my granddad was a politician. He actually ran for mayor for the town, and so
What town
it's
is this?
legal.
Legal.
Yeah,
Is it fairly big or is this
it's a big town. Actually, my granddad's family, the ancestry is basically like they are dons, so they were buried in
Oh.
the church because they were like. But my granddad was very simple, down to earth,
Mm,
so we were raised that way.
mm,
So we were raised to be humble and not to boast of anything. So it's actually a big part for when I was a child. I was being told by my parents that we are not rich.
mm,
They always inculcated in our minds that we are not rich so that we don't boast.
mm.
So whatever you have is just a blessing. So you just have to be thankful, but don't boast of anything. So don't boast about
It's really
anything.
cool to kind of see the perspective from you
Yes.
mentioned your guess your grandparents would be Julia's great grandparents, am I right?
Yes, correct,
Okay.
correct.
So one of the things that you mentioned was that they're pretty wise. I
Yes.
think imagine Nate grew up and was raised in the Philippines.
Yes.
Okay, so they have a completely different perspective than the American way. Um,
Totally different because looking back right now,
sure.
where I would want to acquire properties and stuff,
Mm.
in the past they have vast
Oh, okay.
properties, but they just give them away. It's like
Mm.
giving them away like pancakes. They don't care about properties. They just know that people need this, so they can farm them. Up to
Mm.
now, the people who they entrusted those lands to are still the ones farming them.
Mm.
But my family never cared about those lands.
Mm.
They just cared about raising the family and being.
I think it's in a different world, right? Because I think at this, I mean, I don't know what time this is. This is like in the
Oh, that would be in the 50s and the
50s.
60s and the 70s. So it's totally different from now.
And I mean, you're talking about just coming out of World War II, right? Where
Yeah, yeah. My,
yes,
my grandpa was like part of that World War II.
Yo. So
He was a
so
veteran.
so this means that I mean, yeah, there's definitely he cares more about family because lives are just
Yes.
thrown away, you know. So
And material things are
who cares?
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
They
about
don't
the
care
family.
about it.
So then so you know you mentioned you were kind of there at 4 years old. What was kind of your parents like?
Oh, so when I was 4, I grew up in a very closely knit family.
Mm.
So my dad would always come home for lunch.
Oh,
Yeah, he would
okay.
come home for lunch because it's a town, so it's not driving like 50
Yeah,
miles
like head out to
like us.
LA.
So he would come home for lunch, and then we would have lunch together. We would have dinner together.
Sure.
Everything we do together because we pray the Angelus
Mm,
together at 6 with my grandma because I was raised a Catholic
mm.
that time, but then it evolved because when you grow up, you learn
Sure.
things and you realize you can go direct to God without passing through channels.
Sure. Sure.
So that's how I am now. I'm a Christian directly communicating with God
So
anytime I want to.
so that must have been interesting as well. You're obviously religion that from what I heard about Filipino culture is pretty big,
Yes, it
especially
is.
Catholicism as well.
Yes.
Because one of the things is also family is a big
Mm-hmm.
part of that as well. To see your father come back, I'm not sure what his craft was or what he did for work.
So my papa, I call him Papa.
Okay.
There's only two of them, my papa and his sister.
Hmm.
So my grandparents are able to send them to school and let them finish careers.
Mm.
But my papa is spoiled, so he's the youngest. So he would always just play in school, and in high school he would play basketball and
Right.
stuff. And then when he decided to get married, he realized it was important,
Sure.
but it was too late. He didn't want to pursue the career anymore. So my grandparents just used their connections to get him to a job.
Hey, let's go.
so so he worked for the government in one of the agencies. So that's what he did. But it was great
Mm.
because he took care of my mom up to the moment he passed. He
Mm.
passed in 2018. My mom never had to work.
Mm.
My mom never had to worry about financial. So when he passed, my mom's still getting the benefits from his uh, occupation.
And do you
So she's getting the pension,
Mm.
and she's well taken care of.
and is does he have do you have like like uncles and aunts or is you mentioned that he was the youngest, right?
Yeah, my papa was the youngest, and he has an older sister who
Mm.
also passed when I was in high school.
Mm.
It was tragic, so I don't want to talk about it.
Sure.
Because she was a spinster,
Mm.
and my grandma adopted one of my papa's nieces from a first cousin. But then when she eloped,
Mm.
my aunt got devastated, and so she felt like, oh, I need to find a companion to grow up with, to grow old with. But it was a wrong choice, so it was tragic.
Sure. I imagine that kind of being this seems like a very close family.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you were in the Philippines. Do you have any brothers and sisters as well?
Yes, so I'm the oldest of 3 kids. So
Oh,
I have
okay.
2 siblings. I have a brother and I have a sister. My brother is he settled in the place where we were born
Mm.
because he wanted to take care of our parents.
Mm.
But me, I'm pretty ambitious since I was a kid. So when I changed my mind being a doctor, I decided to become a lawyer. I told you, like, right?
Yo.
So I actually moved to the city to pursue what I wanted. And my papa would always just back me up, and he would always be so proud of what I've been accomplishing. So basically, how I look like
Mm.
is because of my grandma.
Mm.
Because my grandma is so particular with posture, etiquette, and everything else. She was half Spanish and half Filipino.
Yes. Yes.
Because the Philippines has no identity.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
all a mix of all races.
Yeah.
So it's pretty diverse. So my grandma, Spanish and Filipino blood. My papa, Chinese, Spanish, and Filipino.
Okay.
My grandpa from my mother's side is Spanish, Indian, Filipino, and a lot more. So it's pretty diverse.
So the culture here is it's I imagine the food must have been amazing.
The culture, we got the culture so much from the Spaniards
Hmm.
because they actually inculcated it in our minds, to be able to control the situations.
Mm,
They they groomed us to be like them.
sure.
So it's basically very Hispanic.
So well, at least was your relationships with your brothers and sisters like I know you're being the oldest, so they're probably getting spoiled now. So
Yeah, so when I went to the city, of course I miss my siblings.
sure.
My youngest siblings moved to the city too to take up her high school in the city,
Oh, okay.
and we're together. So we lived with one of my mom's siblings.
Oh, okay.
So it's really closely knit. We don't go on our own,
Right,
like you
right.
move out and do your thing. No. So my siblings are pretty much looking up to me. So I'm pretty cautious with every
Kind of
thing
decision.
I do
Yeah, sure.
because they would look up to me. So I'm ate. They call me ate,
Ate.
big sister.
Ate.
So even the nephews that I have,
Uh,
when they're not behaving, my sister would would tell them, I'll tell mommy about it. They call me mommy. So it's always I'm the scarecrow.
right.
So it's always mommy. But I love it because I love all of them. Like, it's one big happy family.
Sure.
That's why it's so devastating to be losing members of the family. Yeah, so that's how I look. That's how I am. That's my grandma. How I think is basically my dad. Because my papa would always tell me, if you believe you can do this, you can do this. So there's no limits. It's all up to you. So I just keep on going, and he would keep on cheering me because he experienced not doing what he was actually supposed to be able
Sure.
to do because he was playing around. So he said, just keep on doing what you believe you can, and we're just here for you. So just let
That's
us.
cool to have
Yeah.
having not only parents that support you,
Yes.
but like also have really cool mentors around you as well.
Yes, yes.
I know that for some families they don't really kind of have that type
Right.
of connection. I imagine that going through kind of elementary, middle school, high school, were you close to any friends? Like, were you able to make a lot of connections?
I have friends, but I just make friends, but no really close friends.
Sure.
I just have one girl best friend and one male best friend, and those are like my siblings
Okay.
in school.
Sure.
Up to now, we're like, we don't see each other, but when we see each other, we're still the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you see them or talk to them all the time, as long as they're there for you.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
lifetime friends you
Yes.
build connections with.
Yes.
That just somehow that you just tend to be like, man, when you see each other,
Yes.
it feels like nothing, like not even a day has passed.
Right.
And that's cool. And
Right.
are they still out there in the Philippines as well?
Yes, yes. Actually, the male friend that I had, he was like a little brother to me because he's younger by a year.
Huh.
And when I was starting a career in the financial industry,
Oh.
when I needed support in terms of like I need clients,
Sure.
he would always help me, like, because he's an architect, very successful architect. So I'm so touched because he would get his family all covered and everyone else that he knows, just to be able to like support what I
Yo,
was
that's
doing.
so cool.
Yeah.
So then tell me about a little bit more of like kind of growing up in the Philippines because you came out into America much later in life.
Yes, yes. We
right?
just came here 2016,
Yes.
June. So I touched on my dad, so that's the reason why I think this way.
Sure.
And how I do things is basically because of my aunt who just passed last Sunday. That's why I'm so devastated when she passed, because she's basically the reason why I do things the way I do. I'm so OC. I want everything tidy. I want everything in order. I want everything systematic. That's her. So, and selfless, always thinking about others before thinking about myself, giving the last that I have just to see someone have something. That's her. And that's why my son was actually telling me last night. I was crying again because she was already in the ICU So she's a spinster. So my mom is barely able to walk now because she has osteoarthritis. So she's taking care of my mom in the Philippines, in the suburb where I grew up from. And she's already in the ICU. She would write notes telling my sister to take care of my mom this way and this way. She's telling my sister how to do things. You're already in your deathbed and you're thinking about something else or someone else. That's big. And she would tell my sister, just laundry, okay? Because she does the washing machine and stuff. Because that's her activity.
Sure.
She would always want that. She would tell my sister how to go go by without her while she's in the hospital. It's so my son was like, mommy, you're like Lola Vid. Lola is grandma. Maybe she's actually like your mother. I said, yeah, because she's been my mother since I was 16 when I moved to the city. So that's why she influenced me a lot. And the most touching part about her, she was an expat overseas, managing a garment company. So she was sent overseas. But when I got married and I was having children, she decided to quit that job, that career, and come home and stay with me to look after my children because she doesn't trust those nannies just by themselves. She wanted to be there to watch my kids grow up. That's why Julia was she was crying so loud
Yeah.
and that's why she wrote that thing on Facebook about how the grandma was. Yeah, she's a very big part of our lives.
You mentioned how big family is, just like
Yes.
how connected you guys were.
Yes.
And I think it kind of makes a lot of sense since you it's not like you came to America
Right.
in like the 90s,
No,
right?
no, no.
You came here much later. in the
Much
20s.
later.
So most of your life is family oriented.
Yes, which is something I'm thankful of.
Yeah.
Because if I got here sooner, if we did not get delayed, I would have issue raising my kids because no one's there to help me raise them. And raising my kids as well, my mom is also part of that. My mom is also my role model in raising us. Like she would always put us top priority. She basically built her world around us, the three of us. So she had no career. She can be something else. But she decided to just take care of the children because she told me the biggest accomplishment a mom could ever have or a woman could ever have is to be able to raise good children who would be able to impact the world in their own little way. So that's how I do it now.
So I was watching a show, and one of the things that was really interesting to me was if you're in a position where you have children, right? One of the biggest fear you can find yourself in is like not seeing your children become the best of their full potential.
Right.
Because anything can come out of nowhere, right?
Right.
Like you mean not just like in terms of like being ill or sick, but more because of like mentalities, right?
Correct.
Like other bad friends that steal your friend. So kind of having these families that come in to support you, like you're mentioning grandma, right?
Yeah.
But she and I'm sorry I don't have her name, but she was
Carmen.
Carmen. Okay. She was she was kind of the person who stepped in even though you could have got a nanny, but you're like, no, I'm gonna
Oh,
come in there.
that's Grandma Vid for them.
Vid, okay. And so Grandma Vid, right? So she would come in and she would step in these roles of like, no, I'm gonna be the one to come and
Right.
support because I don't want someone else to influence your child. I want to be the one to kind of
Yeah.
and just how much of a change.
That's huge.
Huge. It's like
Yeah.
a huge thing that can happen for someone. And so you mentioned that she's very special in the way that she operates and the way she acts.
Yes.
She's very giving. Where does she think she got that from? And how did the time with you with her kind of influence your life?
Okay, the generosity, I told you earlier a little bit. My grandpa would give away lands, make people farm the lands, just like that.
Sure.
So, charity is something that I grew up with. I would always tell my kids jokingly, these people who didn't have enough in that suburb that I grew up from, they would come to my mom or to my grandma or to my papa, and they would ask for help. They would borrow a tupa of rice, and then when they look around, because we have a good, big property. They see coconuts. Can I also have one? And then they look around, they see some vegetables that they can cook. Can I also have this? And then technically they got lunch from us,
Sure, sure.
and they don't even give it back.
Mm.
So that's how my parents, my grandparents are. They're so giving. So sometimes my kids would tell me, "Mommy, you should think about yourself. You should
Mm.
stop thinking about people. You should also think about yourself." And I would always tell them, it makes me feel happy and content when I'm able to help others rather than just make myself feel good
Mm.
or buy me things. I go shopping not for myself most of the time. I always buy things for, for people I want to give it to.
I think
So,
that's the kind of side of just wanting to support.
yes.
When you've been supported so much, it's like you want to pay it forward.
Right, right. That's true.
Kind of give it back to the people that you
Mhm.
had
Mhm.
in your life. And I imagine you were saying that you were kind of entering, because you said you were growing up, right, going through these phases.
Mhm.
You mentioned obviously the connection between not just you and your father and the way that he taught you how to
Mhm.
think,
Mhm.
your grandmother, the way how you operate and how you look,
Mhm.
was essentially the character that you have.
Mhm.
You mentioned obviously Miss Vid and
Mhm.
it seems like your grandparents in terms of the giving side of things.
Yeah.
When did you have your children, and how was that experience? Kind of going into motherhood and being in that role of kind of mentoring someone of your own now.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I would always love taking care of my cousins who are younger than
Uh
me
huh.
because like I told you, I was so influenced by my aunt who just passed away, my aunt Vid. So she also took care of all of us because she's a spinster. So she would go to wherever she's needed. Like she has 10 of them. So 9 siblings. Every one of them who would need her support, she would always be there for us.
Yo.
And then Christmas, she would always come up with something to give all of us. 23 of us, 23 nieces and nephews. She would have something custom made, like clothes with all our names on Christmas. And then we would all be together wearing the same clothes. It's cute. Yeah, it's cute. And then I also have this uncle, the youngest uncle.
Mm.
He would also take us out every weekend for movies and would go, to the park and stuff, me and my cousins. So that's how the family operates. It's always about giving.
Sure.
It's not about holding back.
Mm.
So we were always told by my parents, my papa especially and my mama, you give till it hurts. You don't give your surplus. Because
Mm.
giving your surplus is just like giving them waste. If
Mm.
you give from your heart. I need this, but I know you need it more. So I would give it to you.
There was never a feeling of like, um, I don't know how your childhood was like. We're just
Hmm.
curious. Kind of like ill feeling of just like, why are we supporting all these people? We should support our families. That was that
No.
it never came like that. It's so
No.
cool.
I actually feel so every time someone would pass away, I would be crying my heart out because I regret not being able to give more.
Mm.
Like my aunt who just passed away. I'm like I was so hurt. I'm trying to hold it because I told my husband I wanted her to experience being pampered because she's always pampering us.
Mm.
So it's about time for us to pamper her, and I never got the chance to do that
Mm.
because I'm still starting over here. So
But I still feel like yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing. You
yeah,
just got here. You're still, and it's a whole new world,
right.
How you
Adjustments and stuff.
and I think that kind of the whole kind of the sacrifice nature, right,
Mm-hmm.
of just like, hey, give a piece of you to someone else in hopes that they can enrich themselves and make a better lives for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that seeing that process happen, right? I mean, in my mind, the way I see it is that like, man, giving up so many pieces of yourself at some point in time, you're
Right.
gonna feel empty, right?
Yeah.
But your family it never looked, from what it sounds like,
Yeah.
it never felt like they felt like any emptiness or resentment. It just felt like this was just natural. It was exciting. It was like one of the things that made your family them, like that was what it's like to be kind of in your community.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
so interesting. So You mentioned kind of having your own children and trying to
Mm-hmm.
instill that into them. Was
Yes.
it hard? Because I imagine you were still in the Philippines during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So having my own children, these values
Mm,
came very natural.
mm,
Like you said, giving might make us feel empty. It's the other way around. So
mm,
giving would actually fill our hearts with satisfaction that we are able to fulfill the purpose of why we are created.
mm,
Because it boils down to the very reason why I'm here is because of my big God. I always call him my big God. I don't prevent you from from calling him God, but he's my big God and he's always been my partner. So the people that I mentioned earlier, my grandma, my papa, my mama, my aunt are instruments of God's love for me. So God sent them to actually fulfill the love that he actually and the life that he planned for me. So everything is happening according to his plan. I plan, but sometimes it doesn't happen, so I just let it be because I know he has a better plan. He has a bigger plan, actually. So raising the kids, I always tell them, I look back to how Lola Nene, my mom, raised me, take the pieces that I appreciate are significant and take out the ones that I don't think would make sense. Because sometimes parents are not perfect. We are walking with our children and we are growing up with them, especially me and my husband.
mm.
I got married, I was 24, he was 25. So we were basically kids. So we grew up with our kids. So every step of the way, we're learning. We're raising them, but we learn things from how we raise them. And the very key for us to be able to raise them the way they are now, I'm actually blessed that I would say I was able to raise them the way God wanted me to,
Mm.
is actually just praying about every single step of the way. And when they get hurt, when they were little, they would always pray. It's not, Mommy, take me to the hospital.
Mm.
No, they would always pray. So, up to now, whatever happens to us, if we're in a difficult situation, we pray. If we are happy, we pray and thank Him. If we're hurt, we pray. Because we know that there's always a God who would always be there for us.
Faith is a huge thing,
Yes.
especially being grounded in it,
Yes.
and the growth that you guys are going through with
Mm-hmm.
your children at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, your family is growing as well.
Mm-hmm.
You have seems like a lot, a big family.
Yes.
It's a big. So you can make your
Yes.
own community if you
Yes.
really wanted
Oh,
to.
when we got married, the guest list is just family. And it's like 250
Yo, that sounds like an exciting day.
for both sides.
But I think that's what kind of brings families together. That kind of the
Yes.
special kind of connection that you have. And so you know, I guess the question I have here is kind of growing into the 20s and the 20, obviously meeting your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Was he kind of like the same, like super family oriented? That's the type of lifestyle that his family
Yeah.
comes from as well.
So my husband is not my boyfriend.
Mm.
He's my friend. I considered him my
Mm.
best friend at work. I met him in my first job in AT&T Philippines.
Hey.
So he's very good. He designed those. He was part of the design team for the cell sites of the cellular phones in the Philippines,
Yo.
analog during the time. It was 1992, and I was the executive assistant of his boss, the operations manager, who was an American expatriate, and then he deputized me to manage his team, which is the team that my husband is part of. So, yeah. So my husband is my best friend, and like I told you earlier, I never had close friends. I
Hmm.
just had two
Yeah.
best friends. So he became my best friend at work. And then when things got rough, because I was far from my parents, and
Mm.
my aunt, who took care of my kids, was still overseas that time because she was an expatriate.
Mm.
So we were living with another sibling of my mom. Sometimes things are not smooth.
Sure.
So my husband has been there for me all this time.
Mm.
And then, you know, time would develop and it would just make things more more clear.
Sure.
So we just decided to that we would be
Yeah.
more than that because we can take care of each other and
Sure.
yeah. So and my papa would always like him to be the one taking care of me
Mm.
because he's always there. So when he told my papa that we were getting married, my papa just said, "Oh, sure, good," so that someone would take care of her in the city. Yeah. So when we got married, I was 24, he was 25, and then we gave birth. I gave birth to Julia,
Mm.
1995. We were like playing house because we were kids. That's why my aunt came home and then she navigated.
She like, look, we need to fix this up here. You guys need to. Yeah, what type of operation are we running here, guys?
Yeah, but it was so fun
Yeah.
because we would take Julia out, we would go to the mall, and we were like, we're just like playing, having fun. But when the time came that education would come up and all these other expenses, and we decided to buy a house after a year of getting married. So I
Mm.
was 20, more than a year. So I was turning 26 then, so we got the house. And so we were paying mortgage, we were paying
Mm.
for diapers, for milk, and for everything else. And my kids had one nanny each because even my even if my aunt was there to supervise, the nannies would be the ones doing the dirty work, stuff like that. So all these expenses. So I forgot about my coordinated shoes, belt, and purses.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I stopped buying those
Sacrificing.
and I bought cans of milk instead and diapers. And my husband forget about his other hiking stuff and
Right.
just focus on work and make money and bring food on the table. So we we actually matured sooner than you
Sure.
guys.
Sure.
We were like, I was 25, I was already thinking about these
Mm.
things, and my husband was already thinking about so many things, mortgage and everything. That's why I got into
Mm.
businesses. He also got into his own thing. He's an electronics and a communications engineer, but he ended up in film because when he was pursuing me,
Mm.
I was in advertising
Oh, okay.
because I was supposed to take up law, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the political science closed during the time.
Mm.
So I took up communication arts.
Yeah.
So I got a little bit sidetracked. And I loved advertising. I loved theater and everything else. So I forgot the law. So when my husband was pursuing me, so he got into film.
Mm.
So he was a very good sound engineer in the Philippines, and he got awards when we were back there.
Wow.
So that's his field. And me, I'm doing so many things because I believe that God has given us vast potentials.
Mm.
It's all up to us to cultivate each one of them.
Mm.
So, and I believe that life is too short. So I always seize the moment. I always, when I think of something, I do it.
Right.
Like, I won't just think, oh, I might be able to do. No, I do it right away. So
You tried to take the best. You wanted to take the most out of your life as possible.
Yes.
And it feels like you are. Like one of the things that's interesting with your timeline here is that like you grew up in a fairly big town, but you moved to the city,
Yeah.
which is something that's like obviously as technology is becoming
Correct.
so big, right?
Correct.
And this is in the 94s, 90,
92.
92, right? This is right before, your it seems like your aunt submitted the application to come to America.
Yeah.
Which-
Actually, I moved to the city in 1988 when
Oh,
I
okay,
graduated high school.
Okay.
92 is when I graduated my bachelor's. And then we moved here 2016.
So what was the thought of like, okay, you literally probably just got married, right? But who submitted the application to come to America?
Oh, my husband's mom.
So what was the kind of the thought process behind that? Like, maybe we should transition to the States.
So my husband lost his dad when he was 9 years old. So my mother-in-law migrated in 1990, I think 1992. So if you're a mom, I feel her. If you're a mom, you would want your children to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why.
Huge.
So that's why she decided to submit the application for them to come over. But my husband has a plus two, and that's
Mm.
me. So I was a plus two, and then the kids came out. That's why the papers are always
Keep being,
getting
yeah.
revised, revised, revised. So it took us 23 years to get here. And we already had a life in the Philippines.
Sure.
If you were to ask me, I don't want to live my life
Of
there
course.
because I'm already made.
Hmm.
So all the effort, all the hard work, it's not a walk in the park.
No,
I
yeah.
always tell Julia, success would no longer be an overnight thing.
Mm.
You have to work hard for it. If you want something, you work hard for it and you would get it because God is always there to guide you. But you have to work hard for it because it would not just be given to you in a silver platter.
It's like kind of like planting seeds,
Right,
watching your vegetables grow. You
right.
can't just like toss some water on it and think, all right, well, it should be
Yes,
good. Like, no, you have to keep tending the crop
yes,
until it gets to where it needs to be.
right.
And what was, I guess, maybe a little personal question, but
Mm-hmm.
how was your relationship with your mother-in-law? I imagine being so far from each other. I don't know if you had a much of connection you were able to have with her.
It's just fine.
Okay, let's leave it at that. All right, so,
It's fine. So,
but one of the things I'm really curious about is what do you think is the difference between kind of the Philippines in terms of the town you're from? I didn't write it down. And the city, was it a big different culture shock to you, or was it something you were familiar with, or I don't know how far apart they are?
it's not a culture shock
Okay,
because, yeah, Philippines, like, if I would compare where I came from, the town I came from to the city I went
sure.
to, it's just similar.
Oh, okay,
It's
okay.
just the perspective of the people.
Mm.
The people there think simple.
Mm.
Like, they wouldn't think of you already have a car and then you would think of another car. No. If they have a car, that's their car. If they have a house, that's the house. If you move to the city, you have a car, you want another one. You have a house, you want another condo.
Mm.
It's different. When I moved to the United States, the first thing that it was actually funny because my son was like, "Mommy, is this the United States?" I said, "Yeah, why?" Because we landed in LA.
Uh-huh.
So it was different. We came from a nice place in the Philippines which looked like Orange County.
Oh, yo,
So
yo.
he's like, "Is this really it?" I said, "Yeah." He was like surprised. And then when they got adjusted, because I Googled the safest city and it was Irvine, so we settled in Irvine because I was raising 4 children that time. I want them to be safe.
Sure.
We paid the price.
Yeah.
It's expensive in Irvine.
Yeah.
So they went to school in Irvine and got new friends and stuff like that. So they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Orange County.
Yeah. It's rainbows and unicorns out there.
Yes.
But I imagine kind of that transition for you is hard. You mentioned building this life.
Yes, it
Blood,
is.
sweat, and tears a little bit. You know,
It's not a walk in the park.
you have so much family who is supporting. That's
Yes.
a big thing for you as well.
Yes.
And to be kind of that I don't know how to say this, but being transplanted into essentially
Right.
a whole new world.
Right.
Um,
We
uh,
were uprooted from the Philippines.
I imagine that there must have been hard. Do you have any family out here from your side?
Oh, yes, I have
Okay.
cousins here, but they have their own lives.
Sure, sure.
So it's not like they would be there whenever you need something. They can be,
Sure.
but of course you would understand because they also have their own struggles and stuff. And my husband's mom is here too,
Hmm.
but she's elderly.
Sure.
So you would not expect so much from
Yeah, of
elderly
course.
people. You're more able than them. So when we moved here,
Mm.
even before we became what we were in the Philippines, I would always my kids would see us how we actually managed to get by.
Mm.
They never felt lacking
Less than.
because we would always make them feel that they have enough.
Yeah. Mm.
Because the very thing that my parents and grandparents inculcated in us is be content with what you have.
Mm.
You don't expect to have more than what you have. Be happy with what you have. And when you get more, then be thankful for getting more. So when my kids were growing up, we made sure that we send them to good schools. We made sure that we give them the best clothes we can give them, the best place they can live in. But they see how hard it was for me and their dad to make that happen, because we were not just relaxing.
No, you're going to work.
We go to work, and then we have side hustles. So I never knew how to cook when I got married, because I'm so pampered when I was younger. But I learned to cook through Lifestyle Channel, so I cook gourmet. So whenever I bring food at work, they would always eat. So I decided, okay, I'll bring food, you pay. That would be my gas money.
The hustle.
So my office mates would always pay me for their lunch. So I bring 10 lunch boxes every day, and that covers our gas. So it takes away the budget for gas, and the budget for gas that we should have taken out from our paycheck would go to something else. So, and then I decided, they always want to eat at my place. Why don't I just put up my catering and special events? Because they would always ask for my help
Yeah.
every time there's parties and stuff. So I did. So I had catering and special events. And then
Were you able to bring any kind of like, and you mentioned you didn't learn how to cook until you came out here, but did you gain any kind of cool recipes from home? I don't know.
I have my own recipes.
Oh, okay, get it,
So
girl. I
my
love
my kids would always call it whatchamacallit, because I don't have a name for it. I just come up with something, and here's how I cook. I look at my pantry and my fridge and come up with something, and it's absolutely great. So they told me, "Mommy, you should just become a chef." I said, "That's one of my goal." So when I finish what I'm doing right now,
Sure.
I would become a chef. And then what else, Mommy? I have not yet become a singer. I should become a singer too. I told you we have a lot of things to fulfill in our
Sure.
life. So yeah, so I have catering and special events. I also supplied cakes to this high class bake shops or coffee shops
Yeah.
in the Philippines, because whenever I get married, I decide to quit my job because I focus on my children. I want to be able to raise them like at least 2 months. So I don't work for 2 months or 3 months and then I go back to work. And that's also my way to level up. That's why I was able to
Yeah.
I don't stagnate in one position. So when I resign from this level, when I get back, I would be a tier higher, and so on and so forth. So that's why when I left the Philippines, I already had my career.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I got here, no,
They're like, nope.
not yet.
Round
Not
two, you
yet.
got to try this again.
Yeah, not yet. I started over. So I started over.
How did that feel for you? Was it as kind of adventure exciting thing, or did it kind of like, this kind of hurts a little bit?
Uh, if you would look at it from a different perspective, it would a little bit hurt your ego, because you're doing the things that people are doing for you in the past. But looking at it from my perspective, that if they can do it, I can do it, then it's better that way. And a job is a job. That's how I call it.
You're one of the things that's really interesting about your story here. I imagine obviously there's hard times in lives. Of course there is, right?
Yeah.
But you don't really have this sense of like, woe is me, complaining type of a mentality. It seems
Right.
like you took a lot from your family of just
Yes.
like how to, when things get rough or when situations get hard, you're like always give, always be happy with what you have. If you
Yes.
get more, be thankful, be grounded in faith. Like these are cool philosophies that you're able to bring along with you for this journey. Do you feel like your time in the Philippines, right, prepared you and kind of prepped you for this now new journey that you're having in the States?
Yes, for every obstacle, for every difficulty in the past, I would always consider it a door opening for a new opportunity. Because if everything is smoothly running, there's no way to improve because you're happy where you are. So if something gets rough, you try to get out of that situation. And when you overcome that situation, you're a better version of yourself. That's what I always tell my kids, never settle, because in every step of the way, you should always strive to be a better version of yourself. And in every In everything you do, always compete with your old self, not with others. Others has nothing to do with you. They have their own walk. You should compete with the way you were in the past. If you get a little better, not a lot better, a little better of what you were yesterday in every day that you wake up to, you would realize that when that time comes, you're the best version of yourself.
It's wise.
Yes.
Uh, you talk about kind of coming from, uh, again, I'm trying to follow the timeline here, right? You meet your husband, you fall in love, you have a family, right? You have 4 kids before you transition here.
Yes.
4 children before the transition here, right? Obviously the career building, but you also want to spend time and kind of, be with your family. You saw how your mother was at home taking care
Yes.
of you and really investing that time, and that really helped you with your life. So can you kind of go into that depth of like the dynamics of your children? Are they different? Are they the same? Do you kind of realize like one is, Julie, very different from like your son?
Yes. Yes.
Like what's kind of the dynamic there?
So raising 4 children is like dealing with 4 different individuals.
Okay.
When I come home from work, I would be listening to 4 children talking to me and being able to listen to all of them. So
At the same
it's
time.
like, mommy, no, something's going on with the other one and the other, and you have to be able to address all of them.
Right.
So I made sure that I treat them all equally, but differently because these are different individuals. The other one is sensitive, the other one is jolly, the other one, it's different. To You can't generalize like the way I deal with Julia, I would deal with my other daughter. No, it's not. It's so, and then it's very dynamic, like, because I have a career.
Mm.
I want to be on the top,
Yeah.
and I want to be able to raise good kids, and I want to be able to have a household that is in accordance to what I want. So I have to manage a household, a career, children, and of course my walk with God.
Yeah.
So it's my colleagues would always call me Superwoman
Mm.
because they see how I do things. Like when I was operating a catering and special events business, I would take my 4 kids. They were little, you can imagine. They were all with me, and then if I need some help with something, they would try. They're so cute. So the entrepreneurship is inculcated in them.
Mm.
That's why if you speak with Julia later on, she would tell you some funny stories
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very rewarding to be able to make little versions of yourself. It's like replicating yourself in your children.
And that wasn't you weren't that wasn't nerve wracking. Like it wasn't
Yes.
like I imagine like you're building a career for yourself.
Yes.
Obviously you're managing your marriage, you have a
Yes.
household to upkeep, you gotta, walk with God that you have to do.
Yes.
But you have ambitions. Your father is a big thing with how
Yes.
you think. You want to be the best
Yes.
version of yourself, reach your full
Yes.
potential. So being with them, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like seeing like having these children, but not wanting to like how do I say this, like neglect them, obviously,
Yes.
because you gotta work, you gotta put food on the table.
Yeah.
You're not drained. Like you're not like just like don't talk to don't
No,
interact with me. Like
I am hyperactive.
yo, that's
I,
so
I
cool.
hate not doing anything. So I'm so addicted because of that. I'm so addicted to stress. The more stressful the situation, the more effective I am. Yeah, if it's very smooth sailing, it's so boring. There has to be some, there has to be action. It's always action.
Yo,
You know how I would give you a scenario.
Please.
Before we moved here, I would not want my kids to be riding with a driver. So I would drive all of them to school. We leave the house. Traffic in the Philippines is terrible. It's only 10 miles away from Jilly's school from our place. Her school starts at 7. We leave at 5 a.m. because I have to drop her off and drop Julia off, drop the 2 brothers off to school, and then I go to my work. And then in the middle of my meeting, I would tell my colleagues that I would be out for a little while to pick up Jilly and bring her to my office. That's how hands-on I am. And my office mates understand how I am. So they would just, okay. Yeah, that's how she is. So I leave and bring back my children, and then they wait for me to finish work. And then, yeah, that's how things were. But I enjoyed it
Yeah.
because I feel so, it's like not missing out on anything.
Mm.
You're able to do everything all at once.
The if you mentioned that as a big thing about the world is the way you see it.
Yes,
It's your kind of like your perspective.
correct.
And you mentioned your perspective is very much that I can do anything,
Mm-hmm.
and as long as I put the work in, right, and if this is the right door, if this is not, God is going to open up a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you also mentioned that you have a new walk of faith. You were obviously Catholicism when you were in the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
and as you came out here, you had to find imagine a new church, build
No,
a new
even
family.
before I came here,
Oh, I didn't know
I
that.
was already
Oh,
a
okay, okay,
Christian.
okay.
When I got to college,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And so kind of being in the States now over the
Mm-hmm.
last few years, what have you learned from, I guess, you mentioned there was a lot that you learned from your family when you were in the Philippines. What have you kind of learned now being out here by yourself? And no, not by yourself in a way, but you kind of understand my
Mm-hmm.
perspective.
Yeah, so the first thing, I appreciated everything that we had in the past because that is the main foundation of how we are able to get by. Because if we did not have that kind of foundation, I don't think we would be able to do it here. A lot of friends that I meet here, some Filipino friends, they are actually amazed with how things were for us
Mm,
because yes, we struggled when we were starting,
sure.
but we did not like, there was no, how do I say it? It's always like just a walk that you have to get by, you know. So when we got here, we did not have credit scores. I was planning on buying a house, but there's no credit score, so we can't get into a mortgage.
Yo.
So along the way, we consumed all those down payment money to get by.
Yeah.
So we were renting apartment and stuff. So we just we were supposed to buy a house in 2019,
Mm,
but we were scared because it's the first time, and I don't think like I told you, I'm not stable enough in my career. I haven't found the niche yet
yeah.
to be back to where I was from. So we got our house in 2021, and so we're paying a mortgage after after that, and then before we got that house we had to buy so many cars because there's no public transportation that would take
Yeah.
my kids to school and to work, so they had one car each. So it's basically a total different adjustment
Mm.
from where we were from, because during the time I would drive them to where they would go. Here I had to let go.
They grew up.
Yeah, but it's so hard for a mom to let go of their kids.
Mm.
Up to now, you would see me sending off my children by the garage and pray for them for coverage
Mm.
because I don't trust the streets. I
Sure.
don't trust the people outside when my kids would go out of my house. So I would make sure that God would cover him with his most precious blood every time they would drive out of the garage.
Mm.
So even if I wake up 4 a.m., I would, because I need to send my kids off,
Mm.
even my husband. So my husband's like, "Why do you have to get up?" Because I have to pray for them. Yeah, it's important for he's the only one I can trust. So everything is possible in Christ Jesus.
Mm.
That's why. That's how I believe. You just do your
Community is
part.
also a big important part of
Oh
it as
yes,
well.
yes.
Um, were you able to kind of build a new community? I know, imagine when you're where you're from, you're
Mm-hmm.
very close to
Mm-hmm.
everyone in the community. As
Yeah.
giving as your family has been over the last,
Mm-hmm.
decades.
Yeah.
I imagine you built a lot of connections out there.
Right.
Coming out here, I imagine you had to kind of rebuild that kind of sense of community as well. Any cool friends that you were able to make? Just could not find the right
Uh,
people.
we have friends that we can call good
Sure.
friends, but we don't depend on them, like
Mm.
rely upon them. So it's basically just me, my children, and my husband.
Mm.
So That's why you would appreciate the importance of family, because it's your very own support system. If you have a closely knit family, whatever circumstance you're into, you would be able to survive it
Mm,
as long as you're all together. Julia went to Michigan for a while, but she had to come home because she needed family
mm,
to support her. That's why she had to come home to cut short her her assignment in
sure.
Michigan. Yeah.
Um, one of the last things that I want to kind of touch in before we kind of move into our last chapter here. Um, I think this kind of comes full circle. You mentioned just the sense of like people you can rely on, and one of the biggest people you mentioned was Grandma Dev, right?
Yeah,
Of
Vid.
that Vid,
Yeah.
excuse me. And Vid, she was the person who was able to kind of you can actually rely on to be supportive
Yes.
and kind of give her. She helped you through some of the hardest. I mean, 4 children, geez, and running a
I
job
know.
and driving around people. Like
Yes.
that's and yeah, you mentioned that one of the biggest things you coming at her, I imagine you wanted to kill it at life so you can give back, to people like that, family like that, who was able to support you in your life. Um, did she able to come out here at all? Was she able to kind of see?
That's the frustration I have, because she was excited to come for a visit, not to stay here,
Sure.
because you cannot uproot older people. You would kill them if you uproot them from where they are.
Yeah.
So she would love to visit my children, but like I said, I have not yet been the way I was. So financially, I'm not that able to give her, to process everything for her. That's why I was crying so hard, because I regret that part. She would have enjoyed it here, like for a month.
I think that I from what the stories that you told of her, and I really would like to, obviously for us, we would like to do a show. We would like to dedicate some time to her because I know
Yeah.
that's a big part of like
Yes.
giving, understanding the story of her and who she was. Because I don't even truly know. I'm not sure even Sarah knows what spinstress is. I'm not truly understanding what that term means.
Spinster is a female who decided to be celibate,
Oh,
not getting married.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
You call them old maid.
I was gonna say either midwife. No? That's
Old
something
maid.
different. Old maid. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, uh, that puts even more of a just the yeah. It's almost like I don't want to say a nun, but it's almost in that same kind of context
She's
as well.
better than a nun
Mm,
because her ministry was broader than a nun.
mm.
A nun would only serve God, but she served all of us, the whole family.
Um,
She had a career, but she made time for all of us.
so looking back at your life,
Hmm.
um, and kind of seeing how what just the journey that you have been, you know, how do you kind of feel about where your life has gone and what has happened and the people that you interact with and your family that you're able to have and yeah, how do you feel about your life so far?
Like I told you, life is actually a journey. So you just enjoy every bit of it, every obstacle, every success, everything. You just have to look at it in a better perspective, a positive perspective. Like I told you, if it's a failure, I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as a door opening for another opportunity.
Mm.
Because if there's no failure, there's no improvement. If there's no failure, you never learn, because you would always just be the same. And it's not how I want it. I would rather overcome difficulties and be able to learn a lot than just be relaxing and not having any trouble. As long as there's God to support.
You mentioned a few people in your life, how your family has you being the oldest, you put a
Mm-hmm.
lot of weight on your shoulders,
Yeah.
of having like, hey, I gotta lead by example,
Yes, yes.
how much your father invested into you because he believed into you, who
Mm-hmm.
the potential that you have, and just looking how your life has been, what you've created, like
Mm-hmm.
seeing Julie and what she's getting, like,
Mm-hmm.
man, imagine how proud he would be. I know you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned
Yes.
recently he's passed.
Yeah.
So what's the dream? Um, you know, what's you, 'cause you still have such a big life ahead of you. You know, it's just getting started. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
So you know, what is the dream? What are you fighting for? What do you want out of life? And what's kind of the next steps for you?
Yeah. So I discussed about the people who made me this.
Mm,
Now I would tell you why I'm trying to be even better.
mm,
The biggest why is my family.
mm,
Most particularly my children. My husband and I have that same perspective. Our biggest why is our kids. So to see our children become the best versions of themselves would be the biggest accomplishment we have. We don't actually pray to become super rich
mm.
or super famous. What we only want is for our children to be the best of what they can be.
It's the
Yeah.
selflessness again.
Yes.
So it's just it's like this common theory within your ancestry, your family. It's
Yes.
just constantly trying to pay it forward and give, and um, it's man, it's so crazy. Any people that you want to kind of like highlight in your life that we weren't able to go over? Any, like, I don't know, key figures that we weren't able to kind of, I don't know, teachers or anything at all, like people who made maybe big influence in your life that maybe final thoughts in that area.
Yeah, so to sum it up, it's just top would be God, right? And then my papa,
Hmm.
my grandma, my mama, my tia Vid, and of course my husband. Because without my husband,
Hmm.
who's my backbone, he's actually my backbone and the wind beneath my wings when my papa was already gone. Because I would always want to soar high, and you would not be able to soar high if you don't have your wind beneath your wings. So there has to be someone to actually fuel your drive, right? And my husband is very quiet, but he's
Hmm.
been a very big part of me. He doesn't. I don't tell him that, but he is. I would always fight with him. I'm feisty because I don't believe in sweet wives. No, that's so boring. I would always tell him it would be so boring if I don't nag you. So I always nag him in a nice way, like petty things, but he knows I'm just doing it because I'm excited and I feel I feel giddy about it. Yeah.
Love is an interesting thing, right? You know,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
comes out in many
yeah.
different ways.
It's not a smooth. There's nothing. There's no smooth relationship.
Hmm.
It's always stony, rocky. But at the end of the day, you just reach the part where it's a bed of roses.
Hmm.
After all of those, yeah.
Um, so we have a final section.
Mm-hmm.
We call it the deep questions,
Yeah.
where we get to ask you some deep questions that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of get to see your thoughts about just kind of maybe even questions about your life, because it's very interesting to go through your kind of your story, and then to kind of get these questions answered,
Mm.
and maybe you might have a little different perspective. Like,
Okay.
I may have answered this differently from yesterday till today, but all right, let's jump into it. So.
Okay.
Um, Okay, so one of the questions I have, um, when do you feel judged, and how do you handle it?
When do I feel judged? How do I handle it? Let me think of a recent, recent, recent incident. Yeah, sometimes I feel judged when you question how things are with me. Like I can be better, I can be in a better position, but I'm not. Yeah, I feel like I'm being judged because I'm trying my very best to get to where I used to be, but it takes little steps to be there. And I always believe in perfect timing.
Mm,
I have my own timing, but
mm,
he has his own timing. So I think this is the right time, but he thinks it's tomorrow. So I just do what I can
yeah,
to be able to endure, you know, the agony of getting there.
it's immigration,
Uh
like
huh.
like immigrating from one country to another,
Yeah.
leaving one area for a whole new world. And just one thing I didn't get to ask you, who's been really curious to ask: have you visited the states prior to coming here?
No, because we were always denied
So,
since we are being processed to become
so
citizens.
you the first time you coming here was the day you transitioned your whole family here.
Yes, yes, December 22, 2020, 2015. That's where that's when we
That's
got
right before
here for the
Christmas.
green card. Yeah, we got here for the green card. And then we went back on February 9th for the kids to finish the school year because Julia would be graduating from her bachelor's in the Philippines.
Mm,
And then my other three kids are going to finish the school year before we finally start
transition.
over. So we came back June 26, 2016.
And you seem to be a person who has high standards for yourself as well, though.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned something about yourself that you wanted to instill in your kids. One big thing was to never settle.
Never settle. Because the moment you settle,
Mm.
you're done.
Um, oh, this next question I think was gonna good well.
Hmm.
What do you think is the hardest thing about the choices you've made?
The hardest thing about the choices I made. Hmm. There's a lot of hard choices. I'm thinking of the hardest one. Yeah. The hardest was actually living my life. I already had a life in the Philippines.
Mm.
That was the hardest because I was already making enough that I can even send money here for them. And then I had to leave because I had to choose between that career and my children.
Mm.
I have to be with my children
Mm.
because when I was younger, when I was being interviewed, if you have to choose between your family and your job, what would you choose? I would always say I'm working for my family. Therefore, I would choose my family because I can always get a job anywhere, but
Mm.
my family is just one. There's only one family I got. So I would always choose my family.
Yeah.
So I chose them.
Smart. um, uh, I have two very hard questions.
Okay.
Okay, just preempting.
Mm-hmm.
One, and this is the final two. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
who in your family are you most similar to, and who are you most different from?
I'm very similar to my Tia Vid. That's what my son told me. He said last night he was teasing me, Mommy, you know what? Lola Vid is your mom because you're very similar, selfless. And I was so honored that he said that because he said it in a nice
Mm.
intention. Because I was selfless, I always think about others before myself, and then I always give, and then I'm always my love language is service. If you come to my place, I would entertain you to the max. That's my love language. So that's who I'm similar with. And I'm nothing like my who do who am I not like? I'm similar to all of them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm similar to all of them. But the only thing that I'm different from my mama is uh, so my mama built her world around us. I also built my world around my children.
Mm.
But I never forget about my career. But I can't do what she did. She gave up everything for us. So that's why I'm slightly different.
Um, and the final question for today. Um, man, I'm not sure if I should ask this or not, but it's a pretty deep question. So, um, if you want me to ask it different, let me know. What would you want written on your tombstone and why?
Okay. I already had that figured out.
Oh,
Yeah. So I always put it, I think I have that on my Instagram.
oh, really?
A child of God, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a wife.
And why?
Because that's how I am.
Mm.
That's my priority. to become a child of God and to honor Him in everything I do.
Mm.
That's why when things happen, like my aunt passed, I was asking, why God? Why did I not do enough?
Mm.
Why did you not listen to my prayer to keep her healthy? So that's how I try to strive
Mm.
to be a good child of God and a mom, because I make sure I raise my children the way He want my children to be, and a daughter, because I honor my parents with my life. I'm always careful with how I do things because it would reflect on my parents,
Mm.
how they raised me, and a sibling to my other siblings, because like I told you, they look up to me. Anything I do might be a cause of them actually deviating from their
True potential.
yeah. And then my husband, I'm a wife because I'm always there for my husband. Like I always back him up. I know he can do a lot more, so I'm always nagging him to to be the best that he can be. Yeah. That's my role. That's the reason why I was created, to become those. Those careers are just, you know, icing on the cake. Yeah.
Um, Mr. Bong, I don't think there's words to explain. There's Your life is very, very special and interesting
Mm-hmm.
to see the journey of being raised in your community, in your village, in your family, and just how giving they were. To see the type of characters, your grandfathers in the war, your grandmother's extremely caring.
Mm-hmm.
You have these other, your parents, obviously the interactions you have with
Mm-hmm.
them. Being the older sister and kind of having the
Mm-hmm.
the rest of your brothers and sisters running around. You got your Tia taking care of all of you guys,
Yeah.
trying to manage all
Yeah.
these children running around. You got like just even going through school, getting and graduating high school, hitting into college, graduating college, going to the city, right, finding your husband and starting a family,
Mm-hmm.
right, and then already, right, 4 kids were on the way, like managing that, getting that down. You transition to a whole new world and
Mm-hmm.
start that venture as well. Um, and by no means during any of this conversation do you complain. Not a single moment of just sitting here saying that, like, oh, this is not mine. This is blaming this person or blaming that person. You
Yeah.
take full ownership and just say, like, you know, just the gratefulness of just being able to have this chance. And um, wow, there's lessons to be learned from you.
Thank you.
Where can people find you? Like, where can people kind of interact with you? I know like you said, you have this entrepreneur spirit. Because you're a great cook. I'm about to come slide over.
Oh yes.
Slide
You're
over.
most welcome. Yes.
Where can people connect with you? Where can people kind of chime in and be able to kind of interact with you?
So I have an Instagram that I barely use because I'm not techie,
Sure.
but I'm very much into Facebook.
Okay. Get excited.
Yeah.
So we'll have the Instagram there, and
Yeah.
we'll post it in the chat and also put it in the description. Um, we have a painting that's been dedicated to you
Mm-hmm.
today. And this is interesting for those who don't know. For every episode, as you can see on the back wall, we have a painting that's been donated and designated for
Mm-hmm.
the guest. This was painted by me.
Wow.
So
I'm honored.
listen, anyone, hey, listen, don't listen. This part don't matter. No, when you mentioned something that I thought was really cool, you mentioned something of like being kind of the boat in the ocean, and no matter what the weather is like, kind of like
Yes.
that. Whatever you're going through to continue
Yeah.
persevering. Um, and it's kind of cool. I don't know what the Philippines look like. I don't think it looks anything like this.
Yeah. It's. I love abstract,
Oh, okay.
and what I see here is survival. That's why I picked it.
You know,
And that's my aunt's favorite color.
oh, really?
Yeah, green.
Well, I'm honored to be able to kind of be a part of this, and I'm
Hmm.
thankful for you being on our show.
Thank you for inviting me over.
And I don't know if do you have any other final thoughts before we go?
Uh, just a simple statement.
Whatever you like.
Keep,
If you don't, it's all, yeah, yeah.
yeah, keep doing what you want,
Hmm.
and you will definitely get to where you want to be.
Um, thank you for everyone who joined. Thank you so much for all those who came in and chimed in. Obviously, our goal is to make sure that as many people can get to hear these stories as possible. So please like, subscribe, comment below, share, and thank you until next time. And hopefully we can please do this again. We have
Oh,
a
yeah,
we have
sure.
a vid that we have to go jump into as well.
Mm-hmm.
So to all, have a great day, happy Thursday, and see you later. Bye.
Mm-hmm.